I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keeps dealing me cards, I keep fitting in.
What's going on, people? What's going on? We're back in the building. You already know what time it is. You know what it is. You already know what to do once you click this video. Please make sure you smash that like button. And again, please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are new. So, guys, Liverpool, another player, another scout watch, another player that obviously Liverpool have been semi-linked with, shall we say, or a player that Liverpool have reportedly been interested in for the summer rebuild, and that is Gabriel Veiga. Now, the Celta Vigo midfielder has helped Celta Vigo this season in staying up in La Liga. Those who probably watched the last game of La Liga saw that they beat Barcelona 2-1, and Veiga was the guy who got both goals. Now, obviously, you know, looking at someone like Gabriel Veiga, he plays as a number 8 in that Celta Vigo team. Again, Celta Vigo, not a very good team in a general sense, have been quite poor this season. Had to sack the previous manager. Carlos Carvajal came in, ex-Swansea manager. He came in and he helped the squad, and especially Veiga, you know, to kind of galvanize their season and get them from the depths of where he originally took over. Now, Veiga really kind of came into his own in January, if I'm being totally honest with you. So this isn't a player who I would say, you know, usually with certain players, one, it's either been a full season and you can, you know, kind of see, you know, where they're at as a footballer and stuff like that. Or usually it's been a couple of seasons, you know what they're all about, you know what they can do, what they can't do, etc., etc. But he's really been someone who's come to fruition, would I say, in the last 6 months. First full debut season for Celta Vigo, and he's a very, very tidy player. Now, the reason why I wanted to do a scout watch on him, now listen, we're going to be doing loads of these anyway, you know, any player that we get kind of linked with or are interested in kind of thing. So I'll be doing the scout watches regardless. But when we're looking at someone like Gabriel Veiga, you know, he's different, in my opinion, to again, I mentioned this before about, you know, the types of midfielders that Liverpool are looking at, you know, the types of players that we're looking at, all being of different profiles. What does that mean, you know, for Liverpool going forward? Are we going to be playing a new style? Are we going to be, not even necessarily a new style, so to speak, but are we going to be doing things a bit differently? Are we going to become a team who are more technically sound as opposed to PMP, you know, just intensity and, you know, all of these kind of buzzwords that we throw around when we talk about Liverpool Football Club and under Jurgen Klopp. And Gabriel Veiga, for me, is one of those players that I look at and I think to myself, you know what, he is a player, as I said, different, but maybe a player that we potentially need. Now, my only, would I say, sticking point when it comes to someone like him is that I don't know if Klopp could necessarily use a player, and what I mean by that is, listen, he's a very, very good player, and I would be more than happy to see someone like him. But the principles of Jurgen Klopp's side, midfield especially, you know, does he kind of fit into that? And I think that is the key, and that is the question. To be honest with you, and I think when I do think of that, and when I sit down and try and analyze this and look at that and blah blah blah, we're obviously going to get into, you know, him as just a footballer and what he can do, what he can't do, what he's good at, what he's not so good at, blah blah blah, strengths and weaknesses, etc. But I really, really do like the player, and a player like this is the type of player that I would like to see, you know, at the football club, just because of where I feel football is kind of moving in a general sense. We're seeing teams who are more tactically sound in the Premier League, especially in the Premier League, but even across Europe. You know, so many teams are so tactically sound, you know, because they've got players who are very fluid, players who are, it's not all just about, you know, the PMP, you know, it's not just all about that. You know, a few years ago, of course, you know, that was one of, you know, that was Liverpool's strength. That's the reason why Liverpool were able to win a Champions League and, you know, win a Premier League and considered one of the best teams in Europe, because, you know, that was our fundamentals and that was the thing that kind of soared us to the top. I think now and especially with that kind of model, for me personally, it's not really a sustainable model. And it's only not sustainable purely because it's a model where you'd constantly probably have to keep refreshing, the team, especially with our medical department being so poor over the last 5 years, to be honest with you. Players who are not really able to kind of play in that system, and once they're not able to play in that system, you realize very quickly when watching Liverpool how poor they can actually be. So for me, when I look at someone like a Veiga, I do think, okay, maybe if Liverpool were to sign him, is that Liverpool moving into a different direction? Are we looking for a different type of football? Of course, alongside still, you're going to still need, your players who can be the box to box, the guys who are going to run around and things like that. But maybe now we're not looking at only workhorses. Maybe now we're looking for more technically sound players. And if I'm being honest, with all the players that I've seen us being linked with, he'd probably be the most technically sound one in that midfield anyway. But obviously, we'll dive into the type of player and everything that he is. But guys, welcome to the stream. Gabriel Veiga, what type of midfielder is he? As I said, there's, I want to say confusion, but a lot of people who have spoken about him, a lot of people who have seen him play and stuff like that, they've said, he's like a cross almost between being like a deep line playmaker and someone who can obviously play further up the field in that kind of number 10 position behind the striker. He is left-footed, so likes to play on that right-hand side, hence the reason why I think he would be a very decent signing. He has got a release clause. I believe it is £35 million, roughly about 40 million euros. So I don't think it will be a deal that FSG or Klopp, would look at in a general sense and think to themselves that it's not something that we could potentially do. I feel like that fee is kind of within, our price range. We've seen the reported fee for someone like an Alexis McAllister. So, I think in terms of that and the financial side of things, I think it ticks the boxes that, Liverpool need it to tick. So it's just really about, the type of player that he is, to be honest with you. So looking obviously this season, if I take the banner off, looking at this season, he's played 40 games this season, 11 goals and 4 assists. Now, looking at that alone, if we're just, I know people love stats and stuff like that, but if we're just looking at that alone, very impressive. Very, 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 very impressive. Again, this is in a Celta Vigo side who have not been good this season, flirted and were extremely close to relegation. So to be able to get yourself 11 goals and 4 assists in La Liga, again, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is a goal threat. And that's something that Liverpool have lacked ever since Jurgen Klopp has come to the football club. I know people are going to probably mention Oxlade-Chamberlain, but I think he's more of I always thought with him, he was never really a goal threat. He was more of a chancer. It was more about the percentages with someone like an Ox, because his only thing was about, long range shooting and stuff like that. And it wasn't really down to the player, in and around. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, of course not. But it was just purely down to, well, he takes shots outside the box. So because you've got a guy who can do that, blah, blah, blah. And again, not saying Veiga can't do that either. He is someone who does like to take shots. He is someone who likes to get himself into positions to take those shots. But when you're looking at someone like that in a midfield, especially in a poor team, you are thinking to yourself, is he able to translate that? And why is it the fact that he's able to get so many goals? Again, it's just down to his natural ability. If we're looking here, now, this was very interesting when I saw, so in the attacking sense, you're looking and you can see, a lot of greens in terms of the attacking sense, the XGs and the assists, shots he takes per games, non-penalty goals as well, which is really, really important for me, because then it just shows that you're just not a set piece guy, kind of thing, like certain players that we've been linked with, and certain players we may potentially be signing. Non-penalty goals, progressive carries, really, really good, successful take-ons in games, touches. So he is someone who does like to get himself on the ball. And I think since January, when he started to kind of get himself into the team on a regular basis and become an actual first teamer, he really kicked on from there, to be honest with you. He was I don't want to say focal point of the team, but he was definitely the focal point in terms of, trying to get the team forward, but also the guy that everybody looks to kind of create something really out of nothing. Again, Celta Vigo are not a team who are going to create hundreds of chances in games. It's just the makeup of the of the team in itself. And where they've got Iago Aspas, up top again, they're not blessed with the best of strikers, in that sense. So they were obviously going to need someone else in that team to be able to come up with the goods, come up with some goals, come up with a few assists, to kind of help them out. And that's where Veiga, is kind of blossomed, if I'm being totally honest with you. If you're looking at his heat map, as I said, playing on that kind of right central midfield position, in the attacking sense, that's where I kind of see him. If Liverpool were to sign him, I see him in that position that we obviously do not want to see Jordan Henderson in next season. Again, he's not the only one. There are obviously other players, so I'm not sitting here and saying you must sign Gabriel Veiga. He is the only one that can play, in that position. We know there's a raft of players out there who can play in this position, but, I'm looking at the fee, I'm looking at the age. I also believe that, and don't quote me on this, but I believe if he does come in, he would be classed as an under 21 for next season, which is really good in terms of the registration of players, which then helps us out in terms of if we then wanted to sign someone else, at least Vega's not going to take up, a spot, so to speak, for next season anyway. I think that's more a problem for the season after. But by then, I think we'll be letting go maybe of other players and, things like that. If we're looking at the positions that he's played this season, you can see, as I said, right central midfielder on the right-hand side of three-man midfield. This is when obviously Celta Vigo playing 4-3-3. When he is playing in that 5-3-2 formation, again, on that right central midfield, and then in a 4-4-2, again, playing in that, and in a 3-4-2-1, he's playing as the attacking midfielder on the right-hand side, just behind Iago Aspas. Obviously, Liverpool fans will remember him from his time at Liverpool. Now, I looked at this because I wanted to take a look at what was his what are his average positions in games. Again, sometimes when you're watching these players, and I haven't watched a bucket load of Celta Vigo. I've probably watched them live maybe about a few times, this season, and catching them on the highlights and stuff like that, just to see how they play, to be honest with you, because I think that in itself, before we even look at that in itself is so key. That's something that we don't really take into account, especially, for example, signing an Alexis McAllister. I'll be doing a video on him, if and when Liverpool, get that deal done and dusted. But when we're looking at certain players, we always got to think, of course, look, I mean, taking out Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappe, Haaland, and, these type of guys, when you are looking at certain players, I always like to see the team that they've come from, because you can excel at a team, you could be absolutely fantastic at a team, but is it because of the way that they play? Is that the only way that we're going to see the best of you? And then if you move to another team who do not play anything like that, how does that then translate? And I think that's so key and so important. Hence the reason why with the Alexis McAllister stuff, I'm like a bit on the fence. Very good player, of course he is, and a player, if the reported fee is what it is, which is quite low, you are thinking, oh, I wouldn't really call it a bargain. I think that's probably what his value probably actually is, if we actually take it all into consideration. But I always look at the type of teams that you're playing for. How does the manager like to play? Why is it that you're thriving in that system? And with Gabriel Veiga playing on that right-hand side, he's a focal point. Now, if he were to move to Liverpool, that wouldn't be the case. I mean, maybe over time, maybe if he proves himself to be that type of player, then maybe we might start looking at him as a focal point in that midfield to, facilitate the attack. But if he was to come in straight off the back, it's a tricky one, because I don't know if he'd be coming in to start. That's the weird one for me, because obviously we've got Henderson there, and defensively Henderson is a better player. As much as we don't want to admit it, defensively Henderson is a better player. So that side of things, yes, you can say, especially in the Klopp midfield, hence the reason why I mentioned at the beginning of the video, what is the way, or which way is Jurgen Klopp trying to go with this team? Is he now focusing more on players who can actually play football, or is he more focused on players who, again, workhorses and things like that? We're seeing the Kefren Turams, the Kones. They are technically sound players, so to speak, but there's a level of that technicality that kind of, I think they hit a limit. They hit a bar. Not to say that they're not good. I don't want people to misconstrue that. But when I think of certain players just around Europe in a general sense, there's some players who do have limitations on what they can do. And the difference between, say, a Veiga and, say, a Thuram, or Kone is obviously more defensive, but let's say a Veiga and a Thuram, Thuram probably is a bit more all round. Do you know what I mean? Both defensively and going forward, but he's not a goal threat. Whereas Veiga going forward is better than a Thuram, for example. And I think he's also better, in my opinion, than an Alexis McAllister going forward because of the way that he actually plays. But again, McAllister's a bit more all round, can fill in quite a few positions, can move around the park and stuff like that. Whereas I think Veiga's someone who might have a fixed position, so to speak, and that's where you'll see the best of him. Get him on the ball, get him in that final third, get him behind the three strikers. If you've got movement the way that we've got movement in the team in terms of not necessarily Salah, he doesn't really move off that right-hand side, but more the central striker and the left winger, whoever those two would be next season. I think with that level of movement and the pace that they've got, I think someone like a Veiga would absolutely eat that up. And again, like I said, when you're looking at the average positions, you can see here, this is the I believe this might be not the game against Barcelona. This is the game that they had this season. You can see him in that right attacking, midfield position. This is the game that they had against Barcelona. Again, you can see him one of the more attacking players. Again, this is against Barcelona, so of course, there's going to be a limitation to what where he can go and where he can be. But again, he was so pivotal in that win in itself, and these are the kind of areas that he would like, to potentially take up. When we're looking at the type of player he is, he's able to perform in every position in and around the midfield. He's the kind of midfielder that can make the difference in the last meters, gifted with huge quality, vision, personality, and an elevated work rate. Again, when we're looking at the stats of someone like him, his work rate, I don't feel like it would be shown in any type of metric. Well, not in these metrics anyway, so to speak. I don't know how you would be able to check something like that out. And again, when you're looking just at tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, aerials, and all that kind of stuff at the bottom of your screen, you can see he's not the best at it. He definitely. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my goodness, defensively in those metrics, he's really, really good. But he does have quite a good work rate on him. Again, talking about him playing for Celta Vigo and the type of team that they are, a team who are going to come under the cosh more often than not. Again, we're moving on here. He does have a tendency to always look forward in and off the ball. Again, having a player like that who's not only, but his main movement is going to be, let's push the team forward. Let's get the ball up and early into those strikers with intricate passes, passing between the lines and things like that. He always looks for vertically whenever he receives the ball, looking to advance either with powerful carries or looking for progressive passing lanes. He has a great vision and quality to filter the last pass, triggering potential 1v1 situations against the goalkeeper or find forwards between the lines. Now, it's like I said, where we've got that movement in the team, where we've got those strikers who love to move around, and again, we're it's difficult to say, because we do have quite a lot of possession in games. But I think when Liverpool are at their free-flowing best, so to speak, when they are playing that kind of football, it is kind of really on the counter-attack. Once the opposition's attack has broken down, that's where you see Liverpool, because that is kind of the DNA of a Jurgen Klopp side. I vividly, a goal that I would say epitomizes Liverpool so much was, I think, against West Ham, and Liverpool were in that orange kit, at the London Stadium, and the goal that we scored, I think it was scored by Mohamed Salah, and you had Mane, Salah, Oxlade-Chamberlain bursting forward. That's what I think about, and that's how I epitomize a Jurgen Klopp side. That's what we're really, really good at. Players who are, when we do get on the counter-attack, they're quick. They can get in behind defenses. All you need now is just the right pass and things like that. So, that's just how I kind of see it. Defensively, Veiga adopts an active role in the Celta Vigo. He activates himself fastly when losing the ball for the counter-pressing, making his team push forward in the off-the-ball phase. Despite being an offensive player, he has a good ability to recover balls in 1v1 defensive situations, using his body well and timing the tackles correctly, as well as having good stats in duels, providing huge aggressiveness in the midfield. So, again, with the way that Liverpool like to play, he what he reminds me of? He reminds me of what we probably thought, or hoped, should I say, and Naby Keita would be. But I would say Naby Keita is probably a bit more industrious, within that midfield. But Naby Keita, when he was at, RB Leipzig, he was a player that was a really good ball carrier, playing in that final third, at times of the pitch, for RB Leipzig, I think it's playing behind, not playing behind, but Timo Werner was up top. And when they're in those kind of positions, they can always play the right pass, the right weight of pass. They can always see passes sometimes that other players can't see. Obviously, Navigator didn't exactly work out due to other external factors. But, regardless of anything, I still look at someone like a Veiga. I still look at, other players, and I think to myself, is that the way that Liverpool are trying to go? Is that the way that we feel, we need to go if we're trying to play potentially a different brand of football? Maybe that's the best word, a different brand of football. I mean, I would love that. I would totally love to see us play a new brand of football. I do think we have the players. Let's see what happens this summer. But I do think even last season, I think we had the players to be able to do so. We're seeing we've got a lot more technical players in the team, the Curtis Jones, the Thiagos, the Harvey Elliots, the Fabio Carvalhos. We've got these kind of players already in the team. They're more suited to a more technical possession, quick movement type of game. Whereas I felt like the problem that Klopp was having last season was that he was trying to use technical players to play, rock and roll, P&P, that type of football where it just didn't really work, and you could see it on the pitch. Hence the reason why some of these players just didn't really look that good. Thiago might be an exception just because he's Thiago. He's a top level player, and he's very, very experienced. But the others just didn't really look like they really had found their feet, really, if I'm being honest, especially in the side. Obviously, we were poor last season anyway, but I didn't think that the tactics really helped some of these players. And I think once we obviously moved to the new tactics, even then, I wouldn't even necessarily say it helped certain players, because I still felt that we played relatively the same kind of football, the difference being Trent. And that was it. It helped Trent, amazingly, clearly, because of, what he was able to do in the team. But I still didn't feel that this helps everyone as a whole, kind of thing. So that might just be something to potentially look at, moving forward. If we take a look here, obviously his positions that he's played this season, you can see played central midfield, attacking midfield. He's actually played one game as a centre forward, but again, central midfield is obviously his best position. So, again, low fee. It's not going to be a problem, in my opinion. I don't know what Liverpool's finances are saying anyway, to be honest. But, I don't feel like this is going to be an issue in terms of, the type of deal, that we may or may potentially, may not potentially be able to do. If you're looking here, Fabrizio Romano speaking about Veiga here, he said after the McAllister medical booked, we're trying to get that booked. I think even today I've seen news reports saying that Liverpool are trying to get that medical done today before he flies off with Argentina for the friendlies. Conversations took place with agents of obviously Manu Koenig, Efren Turam, two other players I've spoken about previously, and Gabriel Veiga. He's appreciated, but no bid or talks advancing yet. So, of course, step by step. And this is obviously posted out by Anfield Edition from Oscar MG24. Apparently, Liverpool lead the race for Celta Vigo midfielder Gabriel Veiga. And obviously, this is his release clause, which I said earlier on in the stream, 40 million euros. But again, not just Liverpool potentially looking at him, Barcelona. And I think that's where I actually started to take a bit more notice of him. If I'm being honest, again, wasn't really watching Celta Vigo, this season, I won't lie, but there was always Gabriel Veiga that they were constantly talking about. But again, I didn't really want to delve too much into him. I just thought, he's one of those players, you always find there's always going to be one player from a team who are languishing, at the depths of their league, who's probably the better player in that league. But then, when I did hear about Barcelona, that just intrigued me, not just because it's Barcelona, because of the way that Barcelona play, the way that Xavi wants his team, and the way that Xavi has his team playing. I thought to myself, okay, now, again, I'm a massive Barcelona fan. I'm really engrossed in the ethos of their team, their club, and everything like that. Hence the reason why I have such an admiration for someone like a Pep Guardiola. So when I looked at that, and I thought to myself, okay, is this where Liverpool or Jurgen Klopp is thinking? Again, there's not just Gabriel Veiga. There are other players around who I think could equally do a good job in that Liverpool midfield. But Gabriel Veiga, the type of player that he is, he's a player who can play in that kind of technical midfield. Are we trying to potentially move the team into that kind of way? Because you could say Trent is kind of industrious, so to speak. Obviously, he's been playing in the team for about 5-6 years now. So you could kind of call him that, but he's probably a player that could potentially play in a more technical midfield, type of thing. I don't think he would look out of place anyway, to be honest with you, in a team that likes to keep the ball a bit more, but is just very incisive with what they do, so to speak, because I feel like Liverpool keep the ball and people are going to tell me, here, yes, we keep the ball. We have a crazy level of passes and stuff like that. And I get all of that. But more often than not, most of these passes are not really going anywhere. It's between the defenders and the goalkeeper and back again, this, that, and the third. And then it's always a long ball, up to a Salah or Trent doing a long ball and stuff like that. I never really feel like we're really that incisive. I don't feel, again, I just think because we don't have that type of midfielder, within our team, that's the reason why. Hence the reason why I'm looking at a Gabriel Veiga. And for me, he fits that bill of having someone. You would have to obviously negate his defensive duties, so to speak. So again, that might be a problem. That might be something to look at. But as an option in the squad, if we have the money to do so, I would definitely be looking, at someone like him. These are the kind of different formations I kind of put together in terms of where he could potentially play. Ignore the attack. I didn't mean to put Salah as the central striker and Gakpo as the winger. Should be the other way round. But you get what I mean. If we were to sign a Kefren Turam and a McAllister, Gabriel Veiga, he could potentially play, on that right-hand side. If we're using the formation that we've been using towards the back end of the season just gone, you can see again, Kefren Turam, Trent Alexander-Arnold, McAllister, Veiga. And I think even then, when you've got that type of a box midfield, if they can then, if Klopp allows it, and again, this is a very big if, this is where I question, the manager in-game kind of tactical knowledge and awareness, that McAllister, Kefren Turam, and Trent could easily form a three in their cells. And then you could have Gabriel Veiga a bit further forward, or you could just have almost like the three of them just in front of the back three. Again, all depends on how you get your right centre back. There's so many moving parts to it. It's not just as simple as, yeah, well, we just do that, we just do this. Obviously, other players are going to have to come into effect. Again, this is what I keep talking about with Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp, is Klopp able and flexible enough to get his team to understand that when in possession, there's certain actions, certain areas that you need to be in to allow for other players to be able to flourish and stuff like that. Sometimes I do question that because of the way that, the way that's been successful for him anyway. Sometimes I don't really feel like that's something that we could, just messing around, that's something that, we could potentially do, so sometimes I am looking at that and thinking to myself, Is that something that we could potentially do moving forward? Again, I would love, to see that. And obviously, this is in a kind of 3-2-4-1 formation. Again, this is another formation that Liverpool could potentially play. We don't know. This is what I talk about, the fluidity within the team, the flexibility from a Jurgen Klopp team. Being able to kind of transition into different, not even necessarily formation. You don't have to always switch a formation. It's just more in game. This is more in game kind of stuff. The way that we might set up in certain transitions. Whether it be defensive or in the attacking phases of play. But again, Veiga next to Alexis McAllister. So, look, is he the best option that we could potentially find? I don't think so. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say yes, this is the one that we must buy. But it then all kind of depends on the type of players that we do want to sign in the summer. I do feel like we're going to need someone who is technically sound in that final third of the pitch, as well as obviously trying to be defensively sound as well. Hence the reason why I think the Szoboszlai probably would be my best option. If I'm looking at, who's available on the market, I like Barella. I don't know if he's available on the market. If he is, then, get Barella in if you can. But if he's not available, Szoboszlai probably fits the bill in terms of he ticks a lot more boxes. But I still feel that a Gabriel Veiga is someone that in that final third of the pitch, you get him the ball. We don't always have to look for Trent getting the ball, trying to hit these Hollywood passes all the time. Because, as we see with Trent's stats and stuff like that, he will lose the ball more often than not. So, yes, they can come off every now and again, but wouldn't you want to have someone who can play that intricate football, who can play that kind of tiki-taka football, that most of us love to see. And me personally, that's something that I do hope that we could potentially see in the future. So it is an interesting one, and he is an interesting player who can play in central midfield and as a number 10. But we all know that Jurgen Klopp doesn't play with a number 10. So in that right central midfield position, Would he work? I don't know. You guys let me know what you think of that, obviously, in the comment section, and let me know if that's something that we could potentially do, in the future. Could just quickly show you here before we head out. Again, these are the type of positions I can see him picking up for Liverpool so easily. And I think that we don't have a player, well, on that right-hand side anyway, we don't have a player who can do these kind of passes, if I'm being totally honest with you. If you look at it here, in the position that he's, currently in, in that position, it would probably be Trent, who's always going to have to get into that position and try and find that pass. But it shouldn't always have to be Trent. It shouldn't necessarily always be Trent in that position trying to always get that pass. We should have someone else there who's capable of being able, to do that. Again, you can see here him about to make that run again, that third man run, beyond the attack. Again, Henderson tries to do it, but he's just not good at doing it. So I'd prefer to have someone who is a lot more skilled at doing so. And then obviously you can see, as I said here, makes runs beyond the forward line. So again, for me, he does tick quite a few boxes. He does tick quite a few boxes, and he would be an interesting signing, because I think if we just use Manchester City as an example, if he was to move to a Manchester City, I feel he'd just fit in straight away because of the way that they play, because they're just so fluid. Players moving around, players comfortable playing in all 4 of the 5 or 6 of the midfield positions that Pep Guardiola's kind of made up there. They're all comfortable anywhere on the pitch, and that is where I think everything is kind of moving towards. I'm not saying bin your principles and stuff like that. If you still want to be an intense team and stuff like that, you can still be that. You can still be that while still being good on the offense, and it doesn't necessarily always have to then rely on workhorses, because once these players, the problem I have with workhorses and stuff like that in midfield is once your main starters can't play or are injured and stuff like that, the drop off, regardless of who you get in, the drop off is too noticeable, purely because that player can't reach a level of intensity, especially, for example, in game when Liverpool are so intense and, the passion and everything, we're at a really, really maximum level. When a player then comes off the bench, you can't really match that. It's going to be super difficult for you to match that. But if we're always playing like that, how do you then expect other players to come off the bench? How do you expect players who haven't played in 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, kind of thing? How do you expect them to come in and match that level of intensity, straight from the off, and that's what you need in order for your team to win? It's just difficult. And I just think if you just had more conducive style of football, it would allow for other players to express themselves a lot better. You can still have your Kones, if we get Kone, or Kefren Turam, or whoever, as your kind of defensive minded players, so to speak, but are still good and comfortable on the ball, which Kefren Turam and Kone are. But just having a more conducive style, for me, I think that would be my way. Anyway, again, I'm not the manager. I ain't getting paid these millions to manage the football team. And who am I to say that what Jurgen Klopp is doing is wrong? But next season is going to be very telling to see, how all of this kind of works out. And it's going to be very telling to see, the type of players that we may potentially sign. But guys, thank you for tuning in. That is Gabriel Veiga of Celta Vigo. Good player, right-sided central midfielder. Can obviously play in the 10 as well. So it'll be interesting watch to see if Liverpool sign this player. But I think he is a player that we are interested in, so to speak. I think it will just depend on who else we sign and stuff like that. I think maybe other clubs might potentially get in before we do, if we choose not to sign him. So he's a player to watch. He's definitely a player to watch, and he's a player that I'm very, very interested in. But guys, that is the end of the stream. As I say, thank you for tuning in. Please make sure you leave a like. Please make sure you smash that subscribe button. Share these out, please. And make sure you enjoy the rest of your day. And let me know in the comment section if you think that Gabriel Veiga would be a good signing for Liverpool. I'm G, and I am outie.